is up, my good people of the internet? We're happy to be here with you. This is Tortora
and Alford.
hanging out with you inside of Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora's special here. We bring you Tortora and Alford every single season inside of football season. We're here in the 2024 Syracuse Orange Football season, and of course, we have game number 2 for the Cuse. I did this. I took it away. I wanted you to see if I knew how to count, and I brought it back up. It crept up here. So it's like, take 2 and 2. So they're like, Dan said 1 when he meant 2. So 2 came up here. Game number 2 for Syracuse. What I meant to say is they are 1-0. And Georgia Tech is in their third game.
Exactly.
And they're 2-0. Georgia Tech played Florida State in Ireland to start off the season in week this many, and then they
0 weeks.
Then in 0 weeks, and then they went whatever you taught, whatever you learned in school doesn't exist.
We need more games. 0 weeks.
Yeah. 0 is the absence of anything. It's not there. There's nothing there. 0 has no value. Yet there was 4 games played on a week that didn't exist. And Florida State's like, I'll take that it didn't exist. So then we saw Georgia Tech come home to Atlanta, Georgia, and face off against Georgia State.
Mm-hmm.
Syracuse had their debut with Fran Brown as their head coach. Fran Brown had his debut as a head coach ever. And the Syracuse Orange got a 38-22 victory at home in the Dome in front of 30,000 plus. And that game was against OHIO, not that one. So, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. So, we are here to talk about game week. We bring you in and we bring you out. We bring you through. As we here on Tortora and Alford give you the pregame show. Then we have our postgame show outside of the Dome. And on away weeks, then we'll have our postgame show by other means. And, of course, during the game, you can go to X at CallDT. That's CALLDT. You can also go to the group that I started with Joanne. Shout out to Joanne and to Corey. You could go to Facebook and search Syracuse Orange Faithful, and we put up a game thread. And so I'm writing on that game thread. You can as well all the way through. And you could also follow on X at CallDT. And, of course, you could find us on Facebook at WakeUpCallDT and Instagram at WakeUpCall_DT. And for interviews with the student athletes and Fran Brown, you can also find all of that on Wake Up Call by going to youtube.com/WakeUpCallDT and to our social media, once again, Facebook, X, and Instagram, where those videos are playing. Going into this week, you can watch the video with true freshman running back Yasin Willis. He was in. And you can also go and see wide receiver Jackson Meeks, who made his debut with Syracuse, coming from Georgia with Zede Haynes. And you can also see head coach Fran Brown coming out of the win last week. So, thoughts, now that we've had some time to let it marinate, Syracuse's greatest positives and their biggest areas for improvement coming out of game 1.
You want to do an offense, defense, or just
whatever
overall?
you want to do.
Well, just say positives coming out of game 1 offensively. I think I mentioned it to you during the game, but we can see that they really trust Kyle McCord. You know, they got a lot of faith in the kids, what he can do. I mean, you came out, first drive, 3 straight passes. You know, hey, trying to get them into the game, get them into the flow.
Yeah.
You know, not that they was really worried about running the ball, but hey, you know, and I think it was real important. I went back and I watched the press conference with Ohio coach, and he kind of mentioned, he said, hey, we want to make them one-dimensional in the first half, meaning they was taking away the run. So
yeah,
just leave it to Kyle and say, okay, so if you're going to stack the box, guess what? We're going to throw over the top or whatever you give us. So,
yeah.
And you got to hand it to them that. So I took that away as far as a positive that they, you know what, we're not going to be meathead and just force the run. If you want to try to play against this, then we're going to take the opportunity to do the other. So that offensively, so I feel that, you know, Trevor had a great game. You know, Kyle made connections with like 8 or 9 different receivers. So he spread the ball around, which was good. And then they ran the ball later in the game, you know, and whatnot. So as far as offensive needs improvement, I guess you could just say maybe just come out faster.
Yeah.
The first possession is 3 and out. Yeah, it's going to happen. Nobody's perfect, and Kyle even said in the post game, he's like, you know what? Yeah, we might have went 3 and out, but I just knew there was a lot more football left. There's no need to panic just because we went 3 and out. And Fran kind of said it too. He kept it loose on the sideline. Said, hey, he made a little joke with him and whatnot. So I think maybe come out start faster on offense. So and I'll let you go. We just do offense, defense, and do it like that way.
Yeah, I think on offense the biggest area to me, I mean, listen, the passing game looked good. I think it's to see, and you're going to use it when you use it. You're going to use it when you think it's the right time to, but how you're going to balance. Some games you're going to run more than you pass. Some games you're going to pass more than you run.
Right.
Some's going to be 50-50. So, I think you take what the defense gives you and you go with what's working.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, in the case of Syracuse, I don't really know if there was a lot of negative to say about what they did offensively. I don't know if I'm sitting here thinking like, wow, the offense really needs a lot of work coming out of this. What I would say is defensively that where Syracuse can improve is they definitely have to stop the run.
Yeah.
And Fran said that. I mean, they need to stop the run. They got to be able to key in on it. If Anthony Tyus, the third, who came from Northwestern of the Big Ten, is going to play in the MAC now and play the rest of their non-conference games for Ohio, that dude in the MAC is going to have 600 yards a game. I mean, if he can have 203 yards against Syracuse, you got, there's an expectation of, what Fran has in raising that level. And you look at what he did, 203 yards, 16 carries, 12.7, I think it was, yards a carry. He was over 12 yards a carry in the first half, over 12 yards a carry in the game. Right. And this is how crazy this is. LaQuint Allen, Jr. for Syracuse, had 15 carries for 98 yards. You add one more carry to Anthony Tyus III, 203 yards. Mm-hmm. So 15 carries, 16 carries. 15 carries, almost 100 yards. 16 carries, 200 yards. If you look at the numbers by LaQuint Allen Jr., he had 6.5 yards a carry. And that would be good in any game. Mm-hmm. Except for when you're going up against the guy who has almost 13, who's averaging more than a first down per carry. If you go back and you look at it, we're talking about LaQuint Allen had a really good game. But it was overshadowed by Anthony Tyus III just having his way. And that wasn't even the guy that we were focusing on in the pregame. We were talking about Hunt. Mm-hmm. And Hunt playing in the only game he played in, which was the bowl game, and having, 5 touchdowns in that game?
Exactly. It was just coming out party.
Right. So, and that's the young guy. So you got the transfer coming in doing what he did. Here's some irony and here's some coolness to it, right? Kyle McCord comes from Ohio State. Anthony Tyus III comes from Northwestern. Both of them are in the Big Ten, so they may very well know who each other are. Mm-hmm. Kyle McCord comes out in his debut at Syracuse, 4 touchdowns, 354 yards. At one point in the game, 75% completion percentage, which I think was at halftime.
Yeah.
Then you look at Anthony Tyus averaging over 12 yards a carry, 203 yards, and the work that he did. So those two Big Ten transfers into these teams did a tremendous job in that game. So, I mean, I would say defensively, you got to stop the run. Defensively, I would say don't be afraid to go out and knock these guys. Mm-hmm. It almost seemed like Syracuse was holding back a little in the beginning. It was almost like, I don't know. I mean, it was like Fadil. I mean, the way that I think about Fadil Diggs mm-hmm. is, and I just, to me, I'm seeing him like hit a guy who's like, you know what I mean? I see Vince Vaughn on the ground, right. And Wedding Crasher's going, if I had any lungs in my brain, if I had any air in my lungs, I'd scream at you.
Yeah.
I hate you. I can't breathe. So I'm like, but it's so not, and it's not any knock on Diggs. I'm using him as an example, but it felt like it almost felt like Syracuse was. I don't want to say they were. It's not they were going. It just felt like, just it was almost like seeing an animal stalk its prey, and it didn't just go bite it. Right. Does that make sense?
I can tell you exactly what it was, though. It was. I mean, I can give Ohio some credit too, because We'll just use Fidel as an example. Early in the game, there was even having a tight end line up on the same side with the tackle to kind of help chip. It was the running back would come out the backfield and kind of chip. But if you ever notice when he later in that game when they let him go 1-on-1, and there was something I thought was kind of unique that what Syracuse did. Fidel, he even went from the left side to right side of the line. He didn't always come from one side. And later in the game, he was playing a little bit of like closer to the red zone. They had him like middle linebacker. If you ever noticed, he was standing up in the middle of the, and Marlowe was on one side, and McDonald was on the other side. So he actually played all over the place, kind of like I'm trying to think of Michael Parsons. Michael Parsons will line up at the end from sometimes, and then he'll be in the middle like a middle linebacker, and then coming from different angles. So the offensive line could just say, "Oh yeah, we're gonna chip from this side or come from this side." But I get what you mean by not just Fidel, but the defense as a unit. I think it was not anxious, but and Fran mentioned it too that they wasn't doing what they was coached. And then when you go back and watch the game, there's a lot of diving at the feet.
Yeah.
And the Northwestern kid,
Yeah.
he was just good at moving his feet. He had that little stutter step, and he would hop over the tackles and gain 10, 20 more yards down the field. So I think they just got to keep their head up, maybe gather their feet and wrap up. Make sure you get your body into them. Don't just lay out for a guy, just going for his legs and stuff like that. So you just got to see the target and make sure I don't know if they're going to say run through it, but just make sure you're there. You just don't make the assumption, I'm going to dive at him and I'm going to get his legs, because he was a smart runner. I give him credit. He made the adjustments and he got by him and that was it. Once he usually got by the first guy, that was an easy 12 yards, like you said.
Yeah, no, he definitely. I mean, you see what Tyus did, like you said, and you kept saying it during the game, that he would just get close to you and he just do a little move.
Mm-hmm.
He just kind of just move his body a little bit. He wasn't high stepping anybody. He wasn't jumping over anybody.
Right.
He was just kind of like
stutter he had. Yeah, exactly.
So, but he was finding a way to, because if you were going and he could just make you miss a little bit and just keep moving with it, right? You miss his feet. If you're diving toward his feet or trying to get his ankles or his shin, and he does that little just kind of pick it up and move, then you can't get at him. So, he was making really great plays. He was smart, and he took advantage of the defense. So I'd say defensively, tackling better, stopping the run.
Yeah, and then we kind of expect that with game one. Well, not expect that. We was hoping that they did a better effort, but we'll say. And I like Fred made a funny. Somebody asked in the conference like, "Hey, do you chalk this up or you give them an alibi?" Something to that effect. And Fran was like, "No, I ain't giving them nothing." This is not what we gonna do. Say they don't. No, we ain't giving them nothing like that. No excuses, basically saying. So, but yeah, I guess overall, defensively, we'll give them great. What the best part of the defense was when they did get in the red zone. I think we gave up 3 field goals and 1 touchdown from the red zone. I know they scored more than 1 touchdown, but I think that was on long runs and stuff. Maybe 2. I don't know if that early 4th quarter touchdown was from the maybe the 3rd quarter after halftime. That might have been a red zone touchdown too. It might have been the one I'm thinking about, but and maybe the pitch is the other touchdown they got for like 40 yards. So that might have been another touchdown. So
there's that pitch one. I think was the one that came at the end.
Yeah, that was the 4th quarter one. That was the long one. But yeah, I would say they buckled down though when it was time, because that game could have got out of hand. Early on, we were down 6-0 at the end of the 1st quarter. Could have been 14-0 at the end of the 1st quarter.
Yeah, and that was the thing is they stopped. I mean, you think about it. They had 13 plays, 12 plays. Ohio did in the 1st quarter. They were the only team that scored in the 1st quarter. But that red zone defense that Syracuse had, like you were stating, they stopped them to make it 3-0, where Spedick hit his 43-yarder. Then he hit a 37-yarder, so they prevented that one. And then he hit a 20-yarder, so they prevented that. So here's Syracuse ahead with 49 seconds left to go in the 2nd quarter before halftime, because they only allowed 3 field goals and they scored a touchdown and a field goal. So they were up 10-9 which that could be down 7, or that could have been down 14. It could have been, it could have been 14-10. It could have been 21-10 at that point. So, and then Syracuse scored right before the end of the first half. And then
what did you tell me on that scoring drive? How many seconds did it take? It was 49 on the clock when they got it.
It took 44 seconds to score.
Yeah.
It took exactly 44 seconds. It was Spedix at field goal from 20 at 49 seconds. And then Trevor Pena had his first touchdown of the day where Kyle McCord aired it out to the left side of the end zone. And Trevor chased it down and got under it. And you were talking about you thought the ball was going to keep going.
I thought it was overthrown.
And Trevor sped off to the end zone, got it, and then he went right back to him. So he did it at the end of the second quarter. Then Kyle McCord went right back to him toward the end of the third quarter. Same spot of the end zone for Trevor Pena, who got 2 touchdowns receiving, 1 rushing. And you had said to me, is this his first 2-touchdown receiving game ever? And I went and looked up his statistics and put it in the game story. You could go back and read it on wakeupcalldt.com. If you go back and you look at it, it's not that this was his first 2-touchdown game. It's his second. He's never, ever, in a season, had more than 1 touchdown. So he came into this season with only having 1 touchdown over his entire season at Syracuse. So it wasn't that he's never had a 2-score game. He's never had a 2-score season.
Right.
And in this game, he had 3 touchdowns, 2 receiving, 1 rushing. And so he more than eclipsed his entire career in Kyle McCord's debut.
Exactly. Let me ask you this. Now you made me think about that. So I remember the touchdown against Clemson 2 years ago when he caught the Garrett Schrader pass, I think, and took it to the house. What was his other touchdown? Was it a punt return? Somehow I just feel he has a punt return in there. Maybe I don't know why. Maybe he's come close. I know he's come close at breaking a lot of runs, but I don't know if it was a punt return though.
Yeah, because I think Syracuse, it's been forever since
we had a punt return.
Since they've had a punt return for a touchdown.
Who? Grizzly Steen, maybe. No, Sean Riley, maybe Sean Riley.
Yeah, it's been a long time since Syracuse has.
Yeah, I know. I can remember.
And I know. Whenever it happened, there was a long time in between.
Right.
I believe, but let's take a look at this. So, if we look statistically at Trevor Pena over his career, he had 1 touchdown in 2021. In 2020, he had none, and then in 2022. 22 catches for 203 yards, but no touchdowns. Rushing, his first touchdown came this year. So this is his first. This is his first multiple touchdown season. It's his first two receiving touchdown season. It's his first season with a rushing touchdown as well. And then on the return, in 2020 he returned a kick for a touchdown.
Right. It somehow felt like he had returned one because we know he's a threat.
Yeah,
when he
must be the 98-yarder that he had here.
Okay.
So he had a kickoff return for a touchdown as a true freshman.
Gotcha. I remember he just felt like he was always a threat, and he's always. I told you he's fearless back there. He don't back down.
So in 2020 he had 1 touchdown kickoff. 2021 he had 1 touchdown receiving. 2022 he had none, and in 2024 he has 3 in 1 game. First receiving touchdown, first game with 2 receiving touchdowns and first rushing touchdown ever as a college player. So now he has touchdowns receiving, rushing, and on special teams.
Yeah.
He is playing his way onto a hopeful NFL roster someday.
Yeah, Swiss Army knife, as they like to call him.
Yeah. And the thing is, I saw this in him a while back, and now people are like, he's kind of I was like, why does everybody want to talk about Trevor Pena right now? Everybody want to talk about him at fall camp and all this, because you hear the coaching staffs talk about him, and then everybody's like, they treated him like he was a new player. Well, if they're talking about him, we should talk about him. And I'm like, Trevor's been here for like multiple years.
Yeah, you know what the other best catch other than the touchdowns was the one early in the second quarter, I think. Kyle, it was like just a straight route. He caught him between the safety and the linebacker over, and he kind of jumped and caught the ball. Before that, Trevor seemed like he always only caught slants or outs. They never kind of let him get behind the linebacker and trusted him to go up and get it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Because I don't think we've ever seen him jump up in the air to catch a pass.
No. You could tell they had that rhythm because as soon as he broke the linebacker in the little zone, he kind of looked back and kind of the ball was right there. He just jumped up, got back down and protected himself. So,
well, and that's the thing about Trevor is the fact that he has speed.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody wants to focus on, Malachi James, and we heard some things about Zeed Haynes, but Trevor Pena, they forget you're not put on kickoff and punt return if you're slow.
Exactly.
So, and people thinking, well, he was just going to be a kick return, punt return guy. He's not really a receiver. He's only a receiver if we have an empty backfield. He's only a receiver in an emergency situation.
Right.
But that's not true. Trevor Pena has wanted to be a part of it, and credit to him, he's made himself a part of it. And how about this? Dino Babers and his staff brought him in, but Fran Brown has seen that value, and sometimes when a new guy comes in, even if those other guys are talented, they get pushed to the side. Fran saw what he had in Trevor, and he said, we're going to put him right in it.
What did he tell you about Trevor? Remember we were having that conversation? He said he had Trevor committed to Temple.
Yeah,
I was saying that Trevor wanted to come to Syracuse. He didn't have the offer. He committed, and they, the last staff flipped
he went
him.
after Dennis Jacquez Jr., a bunch of the guys had knew him when Fran was at Temple.
Yeah. So, but no, I think the sneaky part of him is everybody else, kind of like you say, he's just a kick returner, but everybody else gets the attention. Aronde gets it, Z gets it, and then when you see him, okay, maybe everybody's focused on their defensive game plan.
Yeah,
they won't be doing it no more after this 3 touchdown game. I'm pretty sure he's going to be part of the game plan from going forward.
But that was the thing we said going into the year. Who do you guard?
Right.
You got Jackson Meeks, Zeed Haynes, Trevor Pena, Aronde Gadsden the second, and then if you put Dan Villari in there as well, who, and I'm not even mentioning Emmanuel Ross and Justice Ross Simmons and some of these other guys. Let's just think about this. Trevor Pena, his skill set. Aronde Gadsden the second, his skill set. Dan Villari is a Swiss Army knife himself. And then you put Zeed Haynes on one side, Jackson Meeks on the other side. Who do you double team? You can't. This is the first time in a long time where Syracuse, you cannot play them and double team or cheat to one side of the field, because if you give anybody some space, Aronde Gadsden is hoping that you're looking at Trevor.
Right.
Trevor's hoping you're looking at Zeed. Zeed is hoping you're looking at Jackson. And Dan Villari is hoping that you pay attention to everybody and forget about the fact that they're like, that was the guy that played quarterback and just ran the ball. But you don't know what he can do.
Exactly.
And he took the words out of my mouth, because when I was interviewing him, he said to me, he goes, put me and Aronde on the field, who are you going to cover? And that was exactly what I was going to ask him.
Exactly. And then one person didn't, it was LeQuint. Out of all that,
because I was just talking about receiving.
Exactly. You got LeQuint coming out of the backfield.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, but the key piece to it is you got a smart quarterback that can see those, if you're going to take this away, then I'm going to go this direction, you know what I'm saying, without kind of staring it down, kind of watching what you give them and stuff. So, yeah, like you just ready to say, it's been a long time. When can we say that, we always had the 1-2 guys, and you can say, all right, we got to get the ball to these guys.
Yeah. Oh, and guess what? A guy who you didn't really hear that much from in game number 1. Oh, guess what? What about that dude that they call Umari Hatcher? What about number 5?
He had what like 1 or 2 catches, nothing, and there was some drive, third down conversion catches, but it is not like he stretched the field. I would say this about the offense. What we saw, we got little bits and pieces.
Yeah.
It wasn't nothing over the top saying, yep, this is what we're going to do. If you're going to give us this, Kyle's going to take that. You know what I'm saying? And that like that third down, and I think they had I don't know if it was a holding call or something, but it was a 3rd and 15. And they let the receivers go up the field, and I believe they had Trevor come across the middle, caught the pass, and they blocked for him, and he worked his way up for the last 3 or 4 yards and converted. When was the last time we seen a 3rd and 15 converted? Normally you get 3rd and long distance on this team. It's like, okay.
Normally on 3rd and 15, Isaac's going to get a cookie or some water or something like that.
So they did 2 good things. They cleared out underneath, caught the ball, and they both receivers blocked for him. and he had enough, again, speed to get the extra yards and break a tackle.
Let me tell you something. Y'all can say whatever you want to say about whatever you want to say about whatever you want to say. But when you have a receiving core that includes the tight ends that block for receivers and running backs downfield and a quarterback that's running, y'all become a different type of danger.
Yeah.
And I think people need to understand that. So I want to thank everybody for being with us on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt, facebook.com/wakeupcalldT, and on wakeupcalldT.podbean.com worldwide. Fly Fieri said, I like this, a Syracuse flex. Nice. Syracuse to the Big Ten is what he said. And so, listen, prior to this season, I would say they don't want us, but we'll see how things go. But, yeah, so looking at the depth chart, just so you all know, nothing really changed here. Kyle McCord's a quarterback. LaQuint Allen is backed up by Will Nixon or Yesson Willis. Aronde Gadsden, the second, and Dan Villari at tight end. Zeed Haynes, Umari Hatcher, Trevor Pena at the receivers. Jackson Meeks, Emmanuel Ross, Darrell Gill Jr. a part of this too. Left tackles Demetrius Weatherspoon, who transferred in. Right tackle Savion Washington, who transferred in. Mark Petrie at right guard. Jacob Bradford at left guard. Jay-Henri Reed at center. And then the defensive line is the same as it was last week. The defensive line, the only one that doesn't have an or is, you guessed it, Fadil Diggs. At D end, at D tackle, it could be Kevin Jobity Jr., Murad Watson, or Isaiah Hastings. The other D tackle, Tank Wilson, or Rashard Perry, or Elijah Fuentes Cundiff, whose jersey now just says Fuentes. And then D end, Dennis Jaquez Jr., or Chase Simmons, or Jahid Lassane Jr. Middle linebacker, it still says Marlo Wax, with Fran Brown doing his best impression of Bill Belichick. James Hurd Jr. behind him. He did some good things.
Yeah, he did.
Number 6, the redshirt freshman. Linebacker at the other position, Derek McDonald, Anwar Sparrow, who's had some time out there on the field the last couple of years. Corner is still Clarence Lewis. On the other side, Devin Grant or Marcellus Barnes, who we did see get in the game. And then free safety is Deuce. And he said he couldn't wait and talk to his dad about hearing Deuce in the dome, and he made a play, and they did it. And Justin Barron is the everything and anything they need. They call it the star, and last year it was Rover. He's that linebacker, DB that you need. And then Elijah Clark, Cinco Clark at strong safety. Place kicker Brady Denneberg doinked that field goal in and got his extra points down. Jack Stonehouse doing his thing at punter. Long snapper Tom Callahan. And kick returner, it says Malachi James first or Trevor Pena. Punt returner Trevor Pena. So outside of a little Malachi flip and an or for Devin Grant and Marcellus Barnes, nothing changed from week 1.
Yeah, and then I think they still getting into it. But there's a lot of players that get time on the field. It was just like you said, there's a lot of oars on there for a reason.
Oh, yeah.
And, they're going to work their way into the season. Some guys going to probably get more snaps as the season gets longer. And they kind of get more in game shape. But, it doesn't hurt that you can get other guys out there and get experience too.
Yeah.
So that's the good thing about it.
Yeah, no, Syracuse in this matchup definitely comes in with a lot of good and some things to work on per every game. And so you got to learn from the wins and the losses. Georgia Tech comes in undefeated, as we said, defeated Florida State in Ireland when Florida State was ranked 10th in the nation, 24-21. And Georgia State, they defeated them at home 35-12. And so as we look at their roster and where they've been coming into this game, quarterback is Haynes King. Their running back is Jamal Haynes. That's confusing. So, and then we have wide receivers Eric Singleton and Malik Rutherford. And then tight ends Josh Beetham and Jackson Hawes. They do have some tight ends that are out. And then offensive lineman Jordan Williams, Joe Fusel, as well as Jordan Brown, Weston Franklin, and Keelan Rutledge. On the defensive line, they have Machias Scott, Romello Height, Joshua Robinson, Zeke Biggers, There's only room for one Zeke on the field. And Zeke Biggers on one side, Zeke Haynes on the other. We'll see how that goes. Linebacker, Trinilius Tatum, as well as Kyle Efford. And they're running a 4-2-5 as well, as they have their 5 DBs, LaMiles Brooks, Amari Harvey, Warren Burrell, Clayton Powell-Lee, and Omar Daniels is what their depth chart looked like this past game, and we'll obviously see if they have some rotation. Seether and Long at tight end are both out, and they've been out since mid-August, and my prayers for a healthy, speedy recovery for them.
Yeah, they definitely are a tough team. You know, we know what they hang their hat on. The coach is a former O-line coach, and we know what those guys are all about. They like to run the ball. So I think my I'm not worried. The thing I kind of look at, you know, the quarterback and running back dynamic of running the ball. You know, the old, you know, the not split option, but you know, the read option kind of play where they can pull the ball. You know, Haynes King is a good athlete with his legs, and he can throw the ball too. You know, but it's just we're gonna have to pick which one we're gonna allow them to do. You know, we're gonna either stop the run, which I know that's always key for these guys, is stopping the run first, and then making them pass it when they have to. But yeah, we're just gonna have to pay attention and like we say, come ready to wrap up and tackle, because Georgia Tech, watching those first 2 games, is kind of almost like I told you with Boston College and Florida State. I said Boston College is going to watch that same tape of Georgia Tech. And, you know, Georgia Tech like the, as Dino used to call it, mama play. Basically, it's the pulling guard, tackle, run play. And they do so many different variations off of it, whether it's the counter with the quarterback doing it or just the running back. So the guys just going to have to be ready to read the keys and come and be physical. So
yeah, I mean, Florida State losing to Georgia Tech and Georgia Tech running the ball. And then, you know, that's what BC likes to do. And then here's Georgia Tech saying it worked for us before. And so you look at BC saying it worked for Georgia Tech, we're going to do it. And now Georgia Tech looking at Ohio saying it worked for them.
Yeah,
and this is what we are doing. So, you know, running the ball. Haynes King through 2 games, 35 of 45, 421 yards, 77.8% completion percentage, 2 passing touchdowns, 1 pick. On the ground, 19 carries, 91 yards, 4.8 yards a carry. His longest carry is for 28 yards and a rushing touchdown in the first 2 games. He has 1 rushing touchdown. Jamal Haynes, 28 carries, 159 yards, 5.7 yards a carry. His longest carry went 36 yards. He has 3 touchdowns in the first 2 games of the season on the ground alone. And all I can think about is, you know, Haynes underwear is supposed to protect you. Well, here's the irony. The offensive line protects these Haynes instead of the Haynes protecting them. So you got Haynes King and Jamal Haynes, and they're going to make life interesting for this. The leading receiver by far is Malik Rutherford, 11 catches, 197 yards through 2 games, 1 receiving touchdown, almost 18 yards a catch. He has a catch of 52 yards as his longest. Eric Singleton Jr. is the closest to him with 6 catches, 62 yards, so 5 less catches and 135 less yards. And he has yet to get a touchdown. Chase Lane, 4 catches for 56, and Avery Boyd has 5 catches for 41, and he has a touchdown as well for the only 2 receiving touchdowns on the team. We have not seen a tight end get a touchdown receiving. Beetham as well as Hawes, who are looking to play in this game. And I could feel it in my chest that as soon as I said a tight end hasn't scored, it'll happen in this game. And Isaac will look at me and remember what you said.
Not really, but that could be the gamesmanship. You know, I know tight ends are probably a big part of that offense. And what we want to do, we want to stop the run, and what we might overlook trying to stop the run, a tight end slipping a block. Or whatever, and like you say, hey.
Well, that's what usually happens in something like this. You get set up for the run. That tight end looks like he's going to be an extra blocker, and all of a sudden he pops his head up and is beyond the line, and he puts his hands out, catches that ball over the middle, lays down a blow, and all of a sudden you got a 13-yard gain.
Exactly. So, yeah, it wouldn't shock me. Yeah, I mean, whether you said it or not, you know, it wouldn't have shocked me if we were.
I felt it in my chest when I said it.
Yeah. I get you. I know what you said.
oh.
But I know what you mean.
Uh-oh.
He said,
yeah, Yeah. Oh, don't tell Fran. Don't tell Fran what I said.
No, I hope he's listening so they can pay attention.
Hey, Fran, look out for the fake blocker tight end that's coming across the middle.
Exactly.
So, yeah, Haynes King in the first game was 11 of 16. No touchdowns, no picks. And he had no touchdowns the whole game. 146 yards passing, 64 yards on the ground. Jamal Haynes had 2 touchdowns against Florida State, just to show you how this broke down. Malik Rutherford, of his 11 catches, 4 came against Florida State in that game in Ireland, overseas, and 66 yards for Rutherford in that matchup. And yeah, so I mean, just kind of breaking it down and taking a look at it that way, because obviously against Georgia State, outside of a moment that was a little bit like, oh, okay, Georgia State got a score here and maybe they're trying to do something. But I wanted to show y'all by the numbers that I told you over 2 games how much of that came against Florida State, because that's a game obviously overseas. It's a game against an ACC foe, so a little bit different than their hosting of Georgia State,
Right.
where Haynes King had 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, a rushing touchdown. Jamal Haynes had a touchdown as well, 17 carries for 84 yards. Eric Singleton, the wide receiver, had a carry for 35 yards. Anthony Carey had 4 carries for 41 yards. And Malik Rutherford led the way again, 7 catches, 131 yards, and a touchdown. So just to tell you how it broke down, but Malik Rutherford has led everyone in the receiving world in both games for the team, be it a tight end, receiver, or a running back. Jamal Haynes has led the backfield in the first 2 games, and Haynes King, who did not have a single touchdown passing or rushing in the first game, had 3 against Georgia State.
Yeah, I mean, and that Rutherford kid, he's dangerous. He's got speed, and that's another one where, as you're a corner, you can't just always be watching the quarterback. You got to make sure you getting in and out of your back pedal and you sticking with the receivers, because again, that play action, you get too focused on stopping the run and not doing your job. And guess what? I think that one play against Georgia State, I believe it was a blown cover. I think you said it was like a 50-yard was his longest. But I just think I remember watching the replay of that game, and it was just wide open, and he just threw it to the kid, and touchdown. So definitely just have to pay attention and be on your best game.
Pop-up ads, as if I will not name this company because they're not a sponsor. So I say that they rhyme with rectum. But I've been having a bunch of pop-up ads on here, and I haven't gotten pop-up ads in years on my computer, because all I do on this computer is broadcast and edit and work. So how a pop-up ad shows up on here, I have no idea, because as a kid, I might have clicked on something on AOL Messenger and whatnot. They're like, oh, I'm going to get free CDs, and you click on it, and you get spam like crazy. I don't know what's going on with ESPN.com, but figure it out. Figure it out. And Rectum, put your prices down.
Get it ready.
Yeah, get right. So Syracuse going up against Georgia Tech. We know the name Haynes King. We know the name Jamal Haynes. On the defensive side, I named some people off here, and taking a look at some of these guys. Kyle Efford had 13 tackles against Georgia State.
He's the big boy in the middle.
5 solo, 1 tackle for a loss. And then we look at sacks for Georgia Tech against Georgia State. Romello Height had a 1/2 sack. Rodney Shelley had 2 sacks. Trinelius Tatum had 2.5 sacks. Sylvain Yandwin had 1/2 sack. Jordan Vandenberg had 1/2 sack. They had 8 total sacks against Georgia State. 8 total sacks.
And I think that defense is a kind of aggressive defense too. They come from
4-2-5 though.
Yeah, but they still come from the outside. I watched the game, and then when you said it, I was like, "But now the games I watched on tape, it don't look like they're 4-2-5 because they bring up their safeties. I want to say they play close to the line of scrimmage, so and they blitz them too from the outside. So definitely their defensive coordinator, he brings some kind of exotic blitzes and stuff. So you got to be ready for that. We got to pick up all that stuff, I think he's a first-year defensive coordinator, too. I want to see what's the linebacker coach at Duke or something like that, but I could be wrong. But yeah, they're aggressive, 4-2-5, but they still going to bring more than 4 guys at you at a time. So now, as we spoke about our offensive potential weapons, maybe that'll kind of back them off a little bit, and maybe Kyle, if they play their hand too early, and don't disguise it, maybe we can pick them apart. So.
Oh yeah, and I totally messed that up. That wasn't 8 sacks; those were tackles for loss.
Mm-hmm.
So it was 8 tackles for a loss, and so let me make sure I correct myself there. Georgia Tech against Georgia State, 8 tackles for a loss. So, like I said, breaking down the numbers, I tell you what it is, and then I show you by the game. Because you look at Georgia State, and some people might go, well, that's Georgia State versus Florida State.
Right.
Well, against Florida State, 7 tackles for a loss.
Mm-hmm.
So 7 tackles for a loss against Florida State, 8 tackles for a loss against Georgia State. Kyle Alford had 13 total tackles against Georgia State. He also had double digits against Florida State. He had 10 in that. So Ahmad Harvey against Florida State for Georgia Tech had 7 tackles. LaMiles Brooks had 7 tackles. Trinelius Tatum had 6. Omar Daniels had 5. Bunch of these guys got involved. There was 1 sack, and that 1 sack came from Kevin Harris II, getting to DJ Uyunglele. And, man, Florida State.
Yeah. For the opponents coming out starting the season, those two were preferences for the style, style-wise.
Well,
Georgia Tech and Boston College, style-wise.
Yeah, to me, it's not going to get any easier because Florida State this week is playing a game that I've already talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Go back and watch my Memphis Tigers 2024-25 season preview with head coach Ryan Silverfield, where I talk about the fact that Memphis, Florida State is Mike Norvell going up against his old team, and the guy hired right after Mike Norvell left for Florida State, Ryan Silverfield. And I do not believe, even though that's a home game in Tallahassee for Florida State, I don't think that's an easy game. Memphis was picked by the majority of the American Athletic Conference media to win the conference. And I think there's a very realistic world where Florida State's 0-3.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, for what they put on tape so far, it's not really hard for defensive coordinators to kind of come up with a game plan and a scheme for, all right, we've seen what you've done the first 2. And I'm not even talking about their defense. I mean, we know Georgia Tech's offensive style and Boston College offense. Can Memphis be that way? I don't know. But on the flip side of the coin, Florida State offensively, for what they've done so far, defensive guys can say, all right, we've seen what the first 2 teams, their objective was and who they were allowing to do stuff. And I think Florida State kind of midway through the second half kind of started getting a rhythm, but it was just, it wasn't sustainable. They would get in a rhythm and then they kind of 1 or 2 plays and then it was kicking the ball again and then, Boston College again running the clock down. But, it's depend on if the offense can be consistent, then maybe it can give the defense a time to get some rest, stay off the field and execute against Memphis. But I don't know Memphis as being a power running team, but they can definitely on defense take away some keys for Florida State. Because to me, Florida State is still kind of figure out what the identity of this year's team is going to be. There's no more Jordan Travis that's been through the fire for a couple of years, and a lot of the offensive production that they had.
Yeah.
That they lost that too, so they trying to figure out who they're gonna be. So,
and you have to remember that there's guys that left. Jarian Jones got drafted, and he's with the Jacksonville Jaguars as a DB. Jared Verse, he got drafted on the defensive line, and Jared Verse has moved on to the NFL as well, and he went to the Rams. So. This is, and I talked about this with Papa Joe earlier, and for this week, I said, just go with me on this for a minute. I told people when Mike Norvell came to Florida State that he was going to get them in the right place. PJ and I both believed that Florida State would be better with Mike Norvell. I said, hey, just don't yell, don't scream, don't give him a hard time, just let him work. Give him like 3 years, 4 years to get into it. PJ said give him 3 years, they're going to be fighting for a national championship. We both predicted that Mike Norvell could get it done. PJ literally said national championship. They should have been fighting for one last year.
right.
The College Football Playoff Committee did something that they wouldn't do to Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, and so on, and Notre Dame. And what they did was they punished Florida State for their quarterback going down. Now, keep in mind, Jordan Travis went down before the ACC championship, which they won without him to stay undefeated. So they should have been in the college football playoff. Here's the thing. Jordan Travis goes down injured. They find out they're not in the college football playoff. The college football playoff committee, I've argued this, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or right. The college football playoff committee could have a place in Mike Norvell losing his job at Florida State.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because you don't let them in the college, you don't let the team in the college football playoff because of something out of their control. And Jordan Travis is out injured. They find out they're not going to the CFP. A bunch of guys transfer, so Mike Norvell loses that talent, maybe potentially because of the frustration. Then he loses guys to the NFL. If they go to the college football playoff in his fourth year, which was really year 3.5, because they only played like 5 games during COVID.
Right.
If he goes to the college football playoff, he might get an extension. Those guys might have stayed that transferred out.
Yeah.
And even though you didn't have Jordan Travis, and even if you lost, he's in the college football playoff in year number 4. And no one's going to blame him if they lose because they don't have Jordan Travis.
Right.
Now that didn't happen, those guys transferred out, which maybe they wouldn't have. Then you lose guys in the draft. And then you fast forward to going 0-2 this year. We went from Mike Norvell not being questioned hardly at all to now not being in the college football playoff. The college football playoff committee cost him a spot there, cost the team a spot there, cost guys potentially coming back to Florida State this year. And the college football playoff, just by keeping them out unfairly last season, go from Mike Norvell not even being a thought to now being a guy who may be on the hot seat.
Yeah, and they already...
How crazy is that?
It is, but they also already showed that stat, the last 4 years or something like they say Florida State has started 0-2, and 3 out of those 4 or 5 years has been under Norvell. So, and we know he was building it up when he got there. I mean, I couldn't blame him in his first couple of years, but now you throw this on the back end, like you said, and they was giving him a lot of credit for last year, doing an excellent job of bringing in transfers.
Yeah.
And like you said, just for that one omission of the playoffs, you had a lot of guys transfer out or go other places, or not even just transfer out, go to the NFL, maybe because they were like, you know what, I'm just, like you said, I'm just tired of this system here. If I know
we're not going to get in, if I know Jordan Travis isn't coming back.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, it's unfair. I mean, and that's how quick, it can turn on you, too. And that goes for some of these other teams that join in these other conference mergers, and they think they're going to the playoffs. Guess what's going to happen in 3 or 4 years if you don't make the playoffs?
Yeah.
So they're going to be a lot of coaches going to be looking on the hot seat.
Let's look at Jimbo Fisher when he took over as the official head coach in 2010. 10-4, 9-4, 12-2, 14-0 when they won the last BCS national championship with Jameis Winston. 13-1 the year after that. 10-3, 10-3, 7-6, and he didn't coach the last 2 games, so he was 5-6. Then Willie Taggart comes in, goes 5-7. They give him 1.5 years. He goes 4-5. They fire him. Then they bring in Mike Norvell, who goes 3-6 in the COVID year. So I said they played like 5 games. They played more. I think the thing is that they had postponed. They canceled the Clemson game after Clemson had traveled there.
Yeah.
Because I remember they were pissed about that.
Yep.
3-6, 5-7, 10-3, 13-1 last year, losing in the Orange Bowl without Jordan Travis. So, I mean, if you look at this, you go, okay, 3-6 in the COVID year, then 5-7. So they won 8 games in his first 2 seasons. Then they won 10 games to eclipse 2 years plus 2, or to eclipse 2 years plus 2, yeah. So 2 years win total plus 2 he did in 2022. Then he took that total plus 3 in 2023. So this man won 23 games in 2 seasons after winning 8 games in his first 2 seasons. What the hell are we talking about? But see, Florida State fans go from college football playoff team to Mike Norvell got screwed to he's our leader and we got his back to now we're 0-2 and we don't have a quarterback to maybe we should get rid of Mike Norvell. And that's how quick it flips. And folks, remember what I said to you. The majority of the ACC media that voted in the preseason poll voted for Florida State to win. And I call it the Florida State hangover. Follow me. They felt bad for... I'm not saying... Okay, this is my thought process. I'm not saying... This is my theory.
Exactly.
It's my theory. The Florida State hangover. They were good enough last year. They got the same head coach. They got screwed last year, but they were good enough. So they feel bad for Jordan Travis, plus the team was really good, and they got screwed. Florida State hangover, well, you guys proved that you should be there, so we're going to put you there. Not sitting here thinking, last year's team's not the same. Jerrion Jones isn't there. Jared Verse isn't there. Jordan Travis isn't there. It's not the same team. And why did I tell you that I did not pick Florida State? What was my Florida State Clemson 51-49%? Cade Klubnik, DJ Uiagalelei. Who's going to fight me on the DJ fact that 2 games in, and we'll see where it goes, but I said going into the season, I don't believe that it's necessarily going to work, and it's his first season there, even though it's his, 5th season playing because he played a couple games with Trevor got hurt, and then he came in for Clemson and it didn't work, and then he went to Oregon State. DJ Uiagalelei, it's his first season at Florida State. It didn't work in the ACC before. I told you I could not pick Florida State because I couldn't put all my eggs in the DJ basket. It's no offense to DJ. It's just him coming in to this team, and he hadn't been there. And even though Cade's numbers aren't great, Cade has spent years with Dabo. And I just couldn't argue DJ in. So I call it the Florida State hangover. People saying they're going to go back. The media picking them. And when I picked them, it was almost like, Dan, how could you pick Clemson? They're down. Look at where Florida State is.
But yeah, I mean, and that's always one of my big concerns coming into a season is you got a new quarterback in the system. Yeah, DJ, I give him credit having game experience with Clemson and other programs and stuff, Oregon State. But again, this is his first go with a new coaching staff. They come and they're exactly back in ACC, and they lost a lot of offensive weapons and leadership too. So now he's starting with some guys that maybe the other guys, this is their first time getting in the spotlight of being, the number one receiver, number one tight end, or whatever the case may be. So they all kind of trying to figure and play out and feel who's going to do what. But again, I mean, like you said, I can kind of feel it that, yeah, if it doesn't start off great, you told me this, even with Jordan Travis, they really wasn't a great fan of him until he kind of
2 years.
Yeah, until he
was booed. He knew he was booed.
Yeah. So I mean, but that's just the nature of the program. Sometimes they've been on top for so long, and then when rough times come around, it's a cold world out there, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
It's a cold world, and like you say, it could just flip just like that.
And I want to tell people in the state of Florida to think about. Remember when you thought Dan Mullen was doing a bad job with the Gators, and look at what's happening after he's gone. So I wouldn't be so quick to rid myself of a very good coach in Mike Norvell. By the way, folks, we talk about coaching. Before Mike Norvell was Willie Taggart, before Willie was Jimbo, like I said. Before Jimbo worked under a man named Bobby Bowden. And Bobby Bowden was the head coach of Florida State for so long that when he started as a head coach for them, they were an independent school, not in a conference. Bobby Bowden started coaching the Florida State Seminoles in 1976, coached them all the way through to 2009. Think about that, folks. He was the head coach of the Florida State Seminoles for 33 years. And he saw them enter in to the ACC, which they did in 1992. And when I spoke with Mac Brown about this conference and its expansion and what it looks like now, he goes, I was there when they were talking about we want to bring Florida State in, and I was like, no.
That old Tobacco Road. Oh, no.
No, we ain't going to do that. Because South Carolina used to be in the ACC.
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And let's look at back in 1992 and think about why did Max say what he said. Back in 1992, in their first season in the ACC, Bobby Bowden led the Seminoles to an 11-1 record in their first year in the ACC, and the Orange Bowl, which has long had a relationship with the ACC, taking their champion if they didn't go to the national championship. They went to the Orange Bowl. How about this? Bobby Bowden's first year in the ACC, Orange Bowl, went 11-1. Second year, national champion, went 12-1. We look at the year after that, 10-1, 10-2, 11-1, 11-1, 11-2, 12-0, 11-2, 8-4, 9-5, 10-3, 9-3, 8-5. Okay, that's then we go all the way to his last few years. 7-6, 7-6, 9-4, 7-6 is how things ended up with him. Think about that with Bobby Bowden. Entering in 1992, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 straight seasons. Their first 9 seasons in the ACC, they had double-digit wins.
Yeah. And you know what? And I was thinking about somebody was talking about how hard it is to build a championship caliber team. Sometimes, like this year, we can say we can hope for the best for Syracuse, but there's nothing like having guys on the team. Maybe you got a couple of fifth-year seniors and some guys that have been in the fight a couple of years. Just like you just saying, it's Florida State. That team, yeah, you had some transfers, but Jordan Travis and some of them other guys were the leadership of that team. They done went through the battles to get Florida State back to what they was. But just saying that, for him to come in 1991, he kind of a few seasons before that built the reputation of what he want Florida State to look like. And they probably had already had some upset wins along that way, and they were just primed to jump in the conference and take the leadership and the mantle and be that top tier team. I think it was some weird, I don't know if they, I'm trying to think, it was a couple of years before they even lost their first conference game. They was just that dominant when they first came in the ACC.
So I guess Mac Brown, his premonition was right.
Oh, no.
No. Well, Memphis, who's taken on Florida State in their second game of the season, Memphis at home beat the North Alabama Lions 40-0. North Alabama comes from a conference that I had to look up, with all due respect, the United Athletic Conference. The UAC. The UAC is an NCAA Division I AA FCS conference. And in that game, Seth Hennigan, 22 of 30, 2 touchdowns, no picks, 308 yards. Mario Anderson on the ground, 10 carries, 46 yards, 4.6 yards a carry, 2 rushing touchdowns. Greg Desrosiers Jr., 1 touchdown on the ground as well. Then we have Rock Taylor, 5 catches, 87 yards. Demir Blancomsey, 3 catches, 46 yards. My apologies on that one. I don't like ever getting it. I should have just looked that up before I said it. So Demir, Kobe Drake, 3 catches, 40 yards. Marcelo Busey, 2 catches, 39 yards. The touchdowns went to Doyle and Lamphere, the 2 passing touchdowns from Seth Hennigan. So they start off the season with 308 passing yards, 59 rushing yards, a 40-0 win. They did not lose the fumble by Seth Hennigan. Javon Dennis recovered a fumble on defense. They finished the game with 3 sacks, 8 tackles for a loss. Their tackle leader was Chandler Martin with 8. 6 of those were solo. I'm just going to tell you this right now. Ryan Silverfield, you went from Justin Fuente to Mike Norvell. And it was like, to me, Justin Fuente put Memphis on the map. Mike Norvell kept him on the map. And then to Ryan Silverfield, it was like, uh-oh, are they going to drop off here? And they kind of dipped a bit.
Right.
But now this year, people have high hopes for Memphis. And this is the Memphis Tigers, the Florida State Seminoles. This is our coach that we lost. And now the coach that we got right after is going to go up against him. Ryan and Mike know each other, and I'm going to repost the video so you can hear what Ryan Silverfield had to say about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm telling you this right now, folks. You might go, who the hell is Memphis? But when Mike Norvell came to Florida State, you said, well, why are we taking you said who the hell is Memphis when he came there?
Right.
And look what he's done. So who the hell is Memphis? A pretty dang good program, puts guys in the NFL, bunch of running backs alone in the NFL. I'm going to tell you this right now. Memphis is no joke. And I'm just saying, I don't think this is the game that Mike Norvell wanted to see with an 0-2 start in week 3.
Right. So you think,
or in week 2 because they had a week 0.
Yeah, I got you.
Whatever. They're living on Back to the Future Doc Brown time, I guess.
They want to get back in the DeLorean right about now. Yeah. So what do you think? This is another a tough one for the Seminoles?
I do.
Yeah. You know,
I do.
I kind of called it last week.
Yeah, don't sleep.
So hey, we'll go with you this week. So,
yeah, you said Boston College.
Yeah, I said BC like to run the ball, and then if they watch that game tape, you know.
And I sat here and I thought to myself, I should pick Boston College, and then I went and did my drafts. And oh no, I'm sorry, I did think I should pick Boston College. I thought about it, but the Georgia Tech game, I was like, I think I should go with Georgia Tech. I think I'm going to pick Georgia Tech. My gut was like, go with Georgia Tech.
Mm-hmm.
And then all the way to the 11th hour, I was like, I'll go Florida State. And even now when I'm saying it, I feel sick to my stomach because something inside of me was like, pick them.
Yeah.
So shout out to Georgia Tech at BC. I've seen BC hang with them before. They finished this one off. And, frustration when you come to the end of the game and they just take a knee.
Mm-hmm.
Right in front of you. Remember how much Greg Schiano likes that. And so dirty. So the top 25 on both sides is Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, and Alabama. Each team is 1-0. Notre Dame is 5th after beating Texas A&M. They went up 2 spots.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side, that 5th in the AP. In the coaches, it's Ole Miss. Notre Dame is 7th in the coaches. Ole Miss is 6th in the AP. 7 is Oregon in the AP, and they're number 6 in the coaches poll, so pretty close there. Penn State is 8 in both. Michigan is 10 in the AP, 9 in the coaches. They have a test against Texas this week. Missouri is 9 and in the AP, 10 in the coaches. Then it's Utah. Miami goes up 7 spots, defeating Florida, up to 12 in the AP. In the coaches poll, they go up 4 spots to 15. And the team that went up the most amount of spots, going up 10 spots, is USC's defeat of LSU on neutral field in Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas, the home of the Raiders in Nevada. And so USC goes up 10 spots from 23 to 13 in the AP. And in the coaches poll, they had the biggest jump as well. They went up 9 spots in the coaches poll from 23 to 14. And so they went up from 23 in both. They just went up a little bit higher in the AP poll. They went up 1 more spot. The team that dropped the farthest, you guessed it, would be Clemson, who went down 11 spots in the AP, all the way to 25 from being ranked 14th in the nation. And on the other side, the team that dropped the farthest was also Clemson, who dropped down 8 spots from being 14 to 22. So in the same place at 14 in both polls, but the AP, the media, dropped them 3 more spots than were dropped by the coaches. Agree or disagree that USC should jump the highest and Clemson should fall the farthest?
Let me ask you this. Where did Florida State end up at? They out?
Florida State
wasn't there a top 10 team?
Yeah, so Florida State went from 10 to then they would be the one, because Clemson has the biggest fall from the ones that stayed. Well, let me look here. I might be having this wrong.
That stayed in the poll?
Yeah, maybe they didn't stay in. No. You know what it was? Is it says because it doesn't.
They're probably not even receiving votes, is it?
Drop from the rankings from 10. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
So they did drop the farthest. They dropped from 10 out. So the one that dropped the farthest, it's still in the poll. Thank you for
Right.
bringing that up.
Yeah.
Because I didn't even think about it. Dropping in the polls, but staying in the polls is Clemson dropped the farthest 11 spots. But technically, Florida State dropped the farthest as they went from 10 to out in both polls. In the AP and the coaches poll, Florida State went from ranked 10th in the nation in both polls to being unranked from week 0 to week 2 because they didn't do a week 0 ranking because it doesn't exist. And they did a week 1 ranking, so Florida State didn't move.
Mm-hmm.
And then they moved them out. So Florida State has fallen the farthest. Also falling out of the polls in a loss to Notre Dame is Texas A&M that drops from 20 in both polls to not in the top 25, which is funny because Notre Dame started the season 7th, and if Notre Dame had lost to Texas A&M, they would not have fallen out of the top 25.
Yeah, it would have been an upset. So
they probably would have fallen to 10.
Yeah, and you would think, okay, yeah, it was a road game, right? For
a road game for Notre Dame.
For Notre Dame, so the higher ranking team on the road. You know, you would think, well, I guess maybe they figured the 11th man was going to be the difference.
It would have been a quality loss if Notre Dame lost.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was trying to get to, basically.
Oh, sorry.
So, no, not saying it in that way, but
yeah.
Why would Texas A&M fall that far if Notre Dame was that good of a team,
How about this, though? Dropped from the rankings, Florida State and Texas A&M, but Florida State, when you look at the voting, Florida State did not receive a single vote. Dropping from 10 out of the top 25, they did not receive a single vote from the media, not even one vote, not even a mercy vote. And in the coaches poll, they didn't receive a vote either.
Not even a vote from the people that like them?
Right. Not even from Mike Norvell if he was voting, which I don't know if he was, but I'm just trying to add to the joke here. But how about this? But this is why I bring it up. Florida State falls from 10 to out of the top 25. Did not receive a single coach's vote or a single media vote. But Texas A&M, who was the only other team to drop from the top 25, received 97 votes from the media, which was the most, so that would put them at 26 out of the top 25, and received 78 in the coaches poll, which puts them behind Georgia Tech, who had 86. So Florida State falls out and doesn't get a single vote. Texas A&M falls out and gets the most votes in the AP, and to put them at 26 for the teams that didn't make the top 25, and gets the second most votes to be ranked 27th in the nation. So that says a lot. You got a top 10 team and a top 20 team, and you have a ton of people still fighting for Texas A&M, but not a single person fighting for Florida State.
Yeah, cold world, like I said. But let's go jump on.
I wonder how many people are going to erase that ACC champion thing, because I didn't put it. Exactly. I don't have it. And you can go check the tape because it's on my social media. I posted my rankings.
A lot of people are hiding their rankings.
Yeah. Oh, they'll say what they want to say, but they're quick to hit that eraser. And then, gosh forbid I'm right, they're going to be like, oh, well, Dan, I mean, he probably just, closed his eyes and threw a dart or something.
Now let me see. So top Georgia beats Clemson.
Yeah.
And how far does Clemson fall?
So number 1 ranked Georgia beats Clemson, and Clemson falls to 25 and 22. Or pardon me, falls from 14 to 25 and then 14 to 22.
Wow.
So the number 1 team in the nation blows you out and you fall. However, if Georgia, the number 1 team in the nation, had lost to Clemson, they would be in the top 7.
Exactly. It would have been exactly.
Notre Dame, Georgia, they don't fall that far when they lose. But Clemson is about to fall out of the top 25 for losing to the best team in the country.
And that was the reason why I was bringing that up. I mean, you played a good half, you can say.
Yeah.
And then, you fell apart in the second half, But, hey, you're nothing to hang your head on that, you lost to Georgia. Come on.
Can I say something about the coaches poll? Guess who received 1 vote to get in the top 25?
Who's that?
After 1 game. Syracuse.
Well, okay.
Fran Brown.
Okay. Yeah.
Get him, Fran.
That's what I'm talking about.
I want to know what coach did that.
Mike Norvell.
Yeah. Mike Norvell said.
You take it.
Yeah, he's like, you know what? F y'all. So, you know what? I hope it was Dino Babers. 1 person said Syracuse, let's go.
Yeah, let's go.
You know what? I'll say this. Syracuse had 1 more vote than Florida State.
There you go.
And Syracuse was not ranked. going into the season.
And we got an opportunity against the team that beat Florida State.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
You know who else? You know who got votes? And this is insane to me. Florida got 5 votes to get into the coaches poll. So 5 coaches voted for Florida, and nobody in the media voted for Florida. Nobody in the media voted for them, but 5 coaches voted for. Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm incorrect. 5 voted for South Florida. I didn't see that it had gone up and come back. So now Florida's like, you did that just to be dirty. 5 people voted for you. Psych. No. No. South Florida. It's because it's written Boston College 7. Then there's a comma that says South, and then there's a whole other line. So South Florida got 5 votes.
What you talking about, Willis?
And then I'm looking at South Florida get any by the media. No. So how crazy is this? Florida gets no votes to be in week 2 of the top 25. Florida State gets no votes. South Florida has more votes than Florida State and Florida combined.
Okay.
Alex Golish in year 2, who I consider to be a friend, what's up to the Bulls head coach?
There you go. Now just got to get them Hurricanes out your way.
Crazy. UTSA received votes. App State, as well as Texas State, received votes. Coastal Carolina, James Madison, Liberty. People in Tallahassee right now are like, they're like, Dan, my stomach in my ass. Oh man, they're like, shut up, Dan.
Yeah. The coach is like, quit talking.
I'm just reading. I'm reading facts. I'm just reading what I see. It's not. I didn't do it. These are the coaches that I'm reading. Mike Norvell, you got some phone calls to make.
Exactly.
So I'm looking at this. How many of your peers are like, hey, UNLV, who Syracuse is going to play, they got 9 votes by the coaches to try and get in. Tulane got votes. Kentucky, Boise State, SMU, what's up? They're 2-0 because they played in week 0. What a dumb thing to call that week.
Yeah.
Deion Sanders got 1 vote by the media to get in.
And they got Nebraska.
By barely beating North Dakota State.
They got Nebraska this week, right? I believe so. Yeah.
It's gonna be interesting. Memphis got votes. Oh yeah. So Florida State dropped from the rankings, and Memphis got 27 votes by the media, and they were the 3rd most votes. So they're the 28th best team according to the coaches poll with 43 votes.
Florida State said just where we want them.
And again, Florida State. I can't hurt. So, I was like, I'm sorry, man. I can feel it. I can feel the fans are like, Dan, I'm dry heaving over here for the last 2 weeks, and you got to bring this up. I'm just reading. I'm just literature. How about Liberty, though?
Yeah.
And how about Washington without Kalen DeBoer getting votes? And Alabama.
Did they get to the Washington in the Big Ten?
Washington is in the Big Ten, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Alabama, they were talking about like SEC teams and how they did in week 1. Who did they play? Alabama played Western Kentucky, won 63-0.
Yeah.
63-0.
That's a warm up.
Let's just look at the SEC for a minute, shall we? Can we just look at week 1 for the SEC? The SEC schedule in week 1, ladies and gentlemen.
Other than Georgia, Clemson.
Other than Georgia versus Clemson. Which, this is what it looked like. Missouri played Murray State, beat them 51-0. Arkansas played Arkansas Pine Bluff, beat them 70-0. Oklahoma which is in their first year in the SEC, beat Temple 51-3. Georgia beat Clemson 34-3. Texas beat Colorado State 52-0. Alabama over Western Kentucky, as mentioned, 63-0. Ole Miss in the lane train over Furman 76-0. Texas A&M is the only one that lost. They lost 23-13 to Notre Dame at home.
Yeah, they got one more on actually.
Tennessee lost won. Tennessee 15th in the country won 69-3 over Chattanooga. Miami beat Florida 41, or pardon me, Florida lost on that one too. I forgot about that. I forgot about that game. So 41-17, Miami beat Florida on the road in Gainesville. Vanderbilt beat Virginia Tech in in overtime, 34-27. South Carolina beat Old Dominion 23-19, just barely. Mississippi State beat Eastern Kentucky 56-7. Auburn beat Alabama A&M 73-3. Kentucky beat Southern Miss 31-0, and USC beat LSU. So yeah, there was 3 SEC teams that lost, but there was 1, 2. Let me look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 SEC teams. Is it 9 SEC teams that scored at least 50 points in their opening game?
We had a couple of shutouts.
And let's look at how many shutouts we had. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shutouts.
And a few 3-pointers.
6 shutouts. That's like who? 73-3. Like who even? Why? There's no mercy rule.
Apparently not.
There's no okay, that's there's no. What did Dino do in that one game against Wagner? Sped up the second half.
Up the second.
10-minute
the
quarters instead of 15 minutes.
Nothing. Click on that one and see what it was at halftime.
Oh, this was 76-0.
Yeah. Click on that. See what's the scoring breakdown by first quarters. Whatever at the top.
It was 52-0 in the first half.
Jeez.
It was 52-0 in the first half. Then it was 73-0 by the end of the third quarter, and then they kicked a field goal in the fourth quarter.
They really had to kick that field goal, huh?
Running up the score. Lane Kiffin. Oh, man. The Furman Paladins.
Yeah. The Purple Paladins.
Yeah. So, I mean, just look at that schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that schedule. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
So, do they get rewarded for tough scheduling or rewarded for blowing teams out?
Oh, you always get rewarded for blowing teams out. If you're in the Big Ten or the SEC, they're gonna award you for. Well, I think anybody gets awarded for blowing them out if you're in probably the SEC, Big Ten, and Big 12.
Mm-hmm.
So this is this week for the SEC. Texas at Michigan, good game.
Mm-hmm.
Arkansas at Oklahoma State, good game. McNeese at Texas A&M. Tennessee Tech at Georgia. California at Auburn. California, an ACC team now. South Carolina at Kentucky. That's a good game.
Yep.
Middle Tennessee State at Ole Miss. South Florida at Alabama, repaying the Alabama at South Florida, where South Florida kept them under 20 points in a really close game. That was a good game last year.
Yeah.
Buffalo at Missouri. Sanford at Florida. Tennessee at NC State is the battle of where people thought Dave Doran was going to and where he stayed. Nichols at LSU. Alcorn State. Nichols, that's also a meat market in Liverpool, New York. And then Alcorn State at Vanderbilt. Houston at Oklahoma, which there's been some good stuff there before. And then Mississippi State at Arizona State. And that is SEC versus Big 12 now for Arizona State. So, yeah, I mean, there's some good games.
Yeah.
Should we look across the ACC?
Yeah, why not?
What's the ACC doing these days? They got BYU at SMU. BYU's in the Big 12 now. Remember that, folks. That is for this Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Duke at Northwestern is also this Friday. Saturday, Georgia Tech at Syracuse. And Pittsburgh at Cincinnati starts off the day. Then it's Jacksonville State at, thank goodness, not FSU, because Jacksonville State almost beat them and then came back and beat them the next year. Yeah. Both of the games in Tallahassee. Mike Norvell's like, oh, thank God.
Please, not them. No.
No. So Jacksonville State at Louisville. California at Auburn, I mentioned. Duquesne at Boston College. Charlotte at North Carolina. Marshall at Virginia Tech. Florida A&M at Miami. Cal Poly at Stanford. Virginia at Wake Forest is a conference game. Tennessee, which is also with Syracuse at Georgia Tech. Tennessee at NC State. And here's a game that they love to play spoiler, Appalachian State at Clemson.
Yeah.
And you might think, man, Clemson's so much better. Clemson is barely in the top 25.
Yeah.
They're 25th.
Defensively, I wouldn't overlook Clemson though. Their defense hung with Georgia for as long as they could. But offensively, you're gonna have to keep them off the field. But hey, like I told my good friend of mine with the rivalry game with South Carolina Clemson. I said, yeah, I think y'all have opportunity, but Clemson defense is still Clemson defense. You know what I'm saying?
Well, South Carolina has been underwhelming.
Yeah.
They struggle to score.
Yeah.
So and that's not just this season because obviously they've only played a game.
Right.
So let's take a look at the offensive catalyst, defensive catalyst for Georgia Tech and Syracuse going into this game.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you have?
For
offense and defense, yeah. For Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
Offensive, the O line.
Okay.
And the defensive catalyst is number 44, Alford.
Alford, yeah.
Alford. I just see that number all over the field, and
the linebacker,
yeah,
who has 23 total tackles, had 13 against Georgia State and 10 against Florida State.
Mm-hmm. He just now the key is he's a big. If you look at him, he's like a throwback to a Dan Connolly type of linebacker. When you see him, neck roll, whole big stocky kid. He looks like a linebacker. But will he be caught in some not mismatches with the tight ends as we have?
Okay. Okay.
Or maybe he doesn't get a sign on the tight end. How will they play it? That's to me that's going to be the gamesmanship.
Or does Effort go after one of them, and then here comes Dan Villari.
Exactly. Or Quinn Allen out of the backfield.
Yeah.
Who draws his attention and how do they counter that? So yeah, that's my for Georgia Tech. You want me to do Syracuse, or you want to make a stab at Georgia Tech?
Yeah, I'll do Georgia Tech.
Okay.
So Georgia Tech catalyst Haynes King.
Yeah.
The quarterback. Yeah. You said the offensive line, which makes sense because they like to run the ball. I'm going to say Haynes King on the ground and through the air. Let's see how this new Syracuse defense that's filled with veterans, transfers, and freshmen. So that's why I call it new. They're in the 4-2-5. They can fade into a 3-3-5. Elijah Robinson, they talk about this stuff. But looking at this defense with a bunch of new faces, how will they respond to something that has plagued Syracuse over time with different coaches, which has been a running quarterback?
Yes.
So what does Haynes King look like? It's their first running quarterback true test of the season. So because Navarro got out of some stuff, but Haynes King, let's see what this looks like with a true dual threat quarterback. So I'm going to make him the catalyst on offense. On defense, I'm going to give you a couple guys. I'm going to tell you I'm Amari. Did I say Ahmad Harvey before if I did my mistake? Amari Harvey and LaMiles Brooks in the defensive back unit. And at linebacker, I'm going to pick the guy that's got the only sack this season. Or pardon me, I'm going to pick, who did I want to pick here? The only guy who has a sack this season, Kevin Harris, the second on the defensive line. So he has a sack for a loss of 4 yards. So I'm looking at Kevin Harris the second, but you picked Kyle Efford at linebacker. So I'm going to say LaMiles Brooks or Amari Harvey. Both of them have double-digit tackles in 2 games. Brooks has 11 and Harvey has 10. So I'm going to look to the DBs on the defensive side of the ball, see how they stack up against these guys in the field, like the Zeed Haynes, Trevor Peñas, as well as the Jackson Meeks and the Umari Hatchers. Will Umari step up in this game as the other guys kind of took the spotlight? And maybe that was on purpose. We shall see. But yeah, I'm going to call them the catalysts on Georgia Tech's side. But yeah, for Syracuse.
Yeah. Okay. Offensively, catalysts. I'm gonna say Kyle because I think they're gonna throw a lot at him defensively. They're gonna probably try to disguise a lot of blitzes. They probably know he's not as mobile. I mean, yeah, he can run, but
no, he's not.
So I think they're gonna try to move him off his spot. Try to get to him, and like you say, to play to your end. If they're gonna do that, those DBs gonna be playing tight. Maybe saying, all right, we ain't gonna back off of you, or maybe until you prove it to us that we got to respect you. But I think they're going to come after Kyle. So that's why I'm saying if Kyle can read the defense and get the team in the correct plays, even with the headset stuff with the coaches, and if they can find a way to get the right plays, that can be an explosive day for him and the offense. Defensively, Ooh.
So
Front four.
So you think they're going to challenge Kyle and try and get him?
I do. From what I've seen with the way Georgia Tech played Florida State and Georgia State, their 4-2-5 is an aggressive 4-2-5. I see them coming from the boundary, and they come from different angles. They just don't sit back, and I don't think if they sit back and try to and let Kyle pick them apart, that might be a recipe for disaster for them.
This could be so, like you said, if the defensive line is getting after him, then I said those DBs being the catalyst, because if he's forced to throw before he gets hit, he could make a mistake, which could lead to an interception.
Right.
And this could be the game where we first see Kyle do this, which we know that he is a good passing quarterback. But Fran Brown said, I want to see like kid Kyle. I want to see young Kyle run around the yard. Or he said, I want to see young Kyle on the playground, which I feel what he meant was I want to see him run around.
Yeah.
And in this game, he may have to run around.
Yeah, but then it comes to my key, number 44. I don't want to see Kyle running into number 44.
He's like, please run around.
Exactly.
Please run around.
So, you got Eifert back there. I don't want to see Kyle running into him.
He's like, run around. Do it.
So hopefully we can protect Kyle as much as possible. He get that ball out, because he gets the ball out of his hand quick. I would give him that just watching that first game. If he sees it and he's right, he'll get it out. He's not, to me, he's not one of those quarterbacks that's going to hold it. And he did a little bit last game. Yeah, he might have been trying to just do a little much with Ohio, but he's definitely going to have to get the ball out of his hand. So Kyle's my offense. Defense, I'm going to go to D-line, because so it's going to be my number one, my defense for Syracuse against the number one catalyst for Georgia Tech, the offensive line. So the trenches is going to be, for me,
makes sense.
The way what's going to be a good determination of the outcome.
I was hoping these guys were smaller because Syracuse has 6'6" and 6'7", and the defensive line.
He's a South Carolina transfer.
Yeah, the defensive line for Georgia Tech, 6'3", 6'4", 6'4", and 6. Zeke Biggers is 6'6".
Yeah.
So
and we're average height. I mean, we're probably just a little bit, maybe 6'5", a little whatever. But then you say, what size are they? Are they big guys in there? Are they 300-pound guys on the line?
Can I tell you that I love what they call the linebacker position for Trinelius Tatum?
What's it?
Money.
That's what I'm talking about.
So every time he gets a sack, he's going to do this. And don't be thinking it's the Baker Mayfield. It's that money. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That was a Johnny Manziel.
Yeah, Manziel. Yeah.
That was a Manziel. So Kyle McCord for you and the defensive line.
And the defensive line for
Syracuse.
Yep.
Okay. So my catalyst for Syracuse, I'm going to say my catalyst for Syracuse, I'm going to say Umari Hatcher because he had one catch for 8 yards in the first game. So I'm going to say Umari Hatcher as they try to key in on Aronde Gadsden the second and maybe Trevor Pena. I'm going to say Umari creeps up.
Okay.
And then on the defensive side, I'm going to say the catalysts are going to, you said the defensive line. So I can't take that, but the defensive line's got to stop a dual threat quarterback, so that was a good pick. I should have went first. So
but that was your catalyst for Georgia Tech too, though. So the quarterback for them.
So I'm gonna say that I'm gonna say the spies in the middle of the field.
Yeah.
If Haynes King gets beyond the defensive line, I'm gonna say the catalyst for Syracuse is the linebacker core with Derek McDonald. I'll throw Justin Barron in there as the star, which used to be called the Rover.
Right.
So I'll say
somebody that got keep an eye on him.
Yeah. So I'll see the spy guys, Derek McDonald. I'll look at James Hurd Jr., Anwar Sparrow, and Justin Barron as the guys that if Haynes King gets beyond the defensive line, that they stop him before he breaks into the open field. So I'm going to call upon the middle of the Syracuse defense to be the one that thwarts Haynes King, which makes sense because then I went catalyst to catalyst.
Right. And you know what?
And I did it on the other side because I went DB, Georgia Tech, Umari Hatcher, wide receiver for Syracuse. Yeah.
And, he's not he's a pretty big guy, too, Haynes King, with a guy with athletic speed, too. He kind of is another Garrett Schrader, the big, tall, lanky, not lanky, but a tall quarterback with some size that can move. So, and when they come up to spy and tackle him, they need to make sure they come and get him to the ground. Because, he can move and he can, he's not sliding, just put it that way.
6'3", 215?
Yeah, he's not sliding,
Yeah, already 23 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's out of the Texas A&M system and transferred to Georgia Tech.
He came from Longview, Texas, is his hometown, and he is only considered a junior because of the COVID year. So he was at Texas A&M for 3 years.
Really?
Was the outright starter for one, then went to Georgia Tech last season. So he has 1, 2, 3. This would be his 4th year because the COVID year. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait. So the COVID year gives him an extra year. So if the COVID year gives him an extra year, I got to figure this out now. And they can use that as a redshirt year, his first year. So, yeah, he's got another year. Because if you use 2020 as a redshirt year, but you also get COVID year, then he gets 2021, 2, 3, and 4. And then if you count that as a redshirt, that year doesn't count, which would mean that he would get his 5th year, which would mean that he could come back. It's so confusing.
It is. Well, he's not on his 9th year. Just put it that way.
He's not on his 9th or his 7th. Or his 7th. With these guys, I look at their stat sheets and I'm like, did I draft this guy in fantasy football? He's been on 3 different teams as a quarterback. I'm like, is this Joe Flacco? So it's ridiculous. So score. What are we doing?
Woo, score. Yeah, I was sitting here thinking about that one.
Give me a winner.
I'm gonna think if we.
I'm happy to go second on this one because this is a tough one for me.
Yeah. If I think Georgia Tech's going to try to control it on the ground, and if they're successful, that's just going to make chew up the clock. And not to say they can't bust some good runs and just score off a long runner, but
bust a good run,
I want to say, and let's say Syracuse red zone defense can hold the form.
Yeah.
I'll go for the upset. That's what we call an upset.
If Georgia Tech wins, copyright and TM, I'm gonna write because we talked about Jamal Haynes and Haynes King and all my puns. I'm gonna say get your Haynes off me.
Don't tell him too weird. I want to go 31-27 Syracuse.
Oh, that's close to my score. So 31-27 Syracuse for Isaac.
Yes.
All right. I'm going to put that on our feed, our other feed here so people have it. Oh, that's the wrong one. So you said 31-27 Syracuse over Georgia Tech.
Mm-hmm.
So we got, I'm going to go ahead and throw that up here. Todd and Oleg's love child said go Orange. Isaac's pick, and send in your picks, folks. Isaac's pick is 31-27 Syracuse. I wanted to go 4 touchdowns to 3 touchdowns, but very rarely do you not have a field goal in there somewhere.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say I saw a 1 in the score for Georgia Tech. So I'm going to say all right. I'm going to say 30-21 Syracuse.
Okay.
30-21. So
now, I will say disclaimer. This is just my upset pick. Could I see it going the other way? Yeah, because I told you at the beginning of the season, this is one of those games. If we're going to have a 10-2 season, we got to win this game. Yeah. If we lose it, I wouldn't be shocked. But to me, what I saw last year, what we was able to do, again, last year team and this year team was a wholly different team for both teams. But we were able to, you even said it when we was previewing the season, that last year game was like we were just trying to lose that game. It was frustrating to watch. But I take it we was running mostly Wildcat. Now we're coming in with a legit quarterback. And if Kyle can handle business and do what he needs to do, I think we can give them a run for their money. So it's going to be a challenge. You know, like we saying, you were looking at their defensive line. We've got to block for Kyle. We got to protect him. And, you know, we got to stop their run. So if we don't do that, it's going to be a long day.
Yeah. No, you definitely got to stop the run. Got to stop the running quarterback. And I almost picked LaQuint Allen Jr. as my catalyst on offense because I think they definitely need to run the ball better.
Yeah.
So, and I like to see them run it more.
Yeah,
so
I would too. I mean,
yeah, Syracuse lost to Georgia Tech on the road at Georgia Tech last season, 31-22, and I have them winning 30-21. So pretty close score.
Okay.
Just going the other way for Syracuse.
Yeah.
And that was Dan Villari having to do it, and apparently Dino and the team didn't think that Georgia Tech had watched film. So,
well, yeah, you know,
because they're like, "Hey, is Dan Villari going to be under center?" And they're like, "It could be anybody."
We called your bluff.
We're gonna just watch the tape. We're gonna watch the film. Not go look at the film. By the way, last year, Haynes, and obviously different guys out there, but Haynes King was 16-20, 138, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He was the leading rusher on the team. 11 carries, 80. Oh, pardon me. This is super weird. Haynes King and Jamal Haynes, both 11 carries, both 82 yards, both 7.5 yards a carry, and a touchdown. So apparently Haynes King and Jamal Haynes, he was like, "Hey, how much you got? I got 67 yards. Yo, give me the ball." You know, like how many? I don't think there's ever been a time in my 20 plus years of broadcasting where I've read to you that a quarterback and a running back had the same amount of carries, same amount of yards, same average per carry, and both had the same amount of touchdowns. The only difference they had was Jamal Haynes had a 30-yard run and Haynes King's longest was 19. That's insane. Dante Smith had the most carries with 12 for 38 yards. Singleton Jr. was he had the most catches against Syracuse last year, 5. He went 30 yards on that. Jamal Haynes caught 2 out of the backfield. Malik Rutherford caught 3 in the game for 14 yards and did not score. So, and Jamal Haynes also lost a fumble in the game. And Kyle Efford had an interception, the guy that we talked about. He had an interception last year against Syracuse. So it's something else to look at. And it doesn't show how many tackles that he had in here.
He wasn't the leader.
So, yeah, he had 1 interception in the game. By the way, Dan Villari in that game went 14 for 14 for 59 yards.
Yeah, it was that one of the games where he didn't miss. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, 14 for 14. LaQuint Allen against Georgia Tech last year, 27 carries, 120 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, 4.4 yards per carry, was the leading receiver as well. 8 catches, led everyone. He was ahead of Braden Davis, the quarterback, who had 2 catches, and Donovan Brown, who is not with the team right now.
So you just show you how we were depending on 2 people.
Yeah, so I said LaQuint Allen could be the catalyst in this game, that I almost picked him to be the catalyst, and in the last game he was the catalyst.
Right.
Yeah, on receiving and rushing. Crazy. So they might key in on him, which opens up Will Nixon or a Malachi James or a...
Or
Willis.
as you say, Omari Hodger. They're going to say we're going to take away LaQuint. You know, and then there's opportunity.
Well, last year, if they took away Aronde Gadsden the second or LaQuint Allen Jr. when Dan Villari had to play quarterback, if they took away if they took away Aronde, because you think about Dan Villari was not a tight end the whole season. He had a shift. But last season, if you took away Aronde and LaQuint, pretty much game over.
Right. Well, yeah.
Now you can't.
Yeah.
If you take them away, okay. So then Syracuse goes, Kamir Yasin, Kamir Will Nixon, or they go Umari, Zeed, Jackson, Trevor, Dan. That's the difference between last year to this year, with no disrespect. If you took Aronde out of the passing game, you took LaQuint out of the rushing game, the game was over.
Right.
And now that ain't the case.
Yeah. And like I say, keep Kyle upright, and we got an opportunity.
Yeah, and Isaac said it best. The games are won, championships are won in the trenches. In the famous words of former Syracuse assistant coach, and when I met him, the UCF head coach for the Knights down in Orlando, Florida, George O'Leary said, you build a championship team, you build a team from the trenches out, from the offensive, defensive line out. Anyone who is doing any other way of building their team needs to do something other than coaching because they don't get it. He said, if you want to win a championship, you go from the inside out. And in order for Syracuse to win a game against a quality, tough opponent in Georgia Tech, could be one of the toughest opponents this season, they're going to have to stop the run. They're going to have to do their best to make Haynes King at least one-dimensional and then take care of that dimension. So the defensive line linebackers need to keep him in the pocket, and then the DBs need to take care of business in the field. And then LeQuint, Arande, Dan, Trevor, Umari, Z, Jackson, somebody's got to get after it. And it wouldn't hurt in a game that could be close like this if Trevor or Malachi decided to run it back.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Add a little special team magic in there. You know what? Hey, let's beat them on all three phases of the game. But I like what you just said about defense because I was thinking about that too. Defensive ends, for Syracuse, of course, I don't want to see them lose contain going up the field too much. Kind of maybe let's put the pressure through the middle and make them spill out to the defensive ends. Don't kind of create an unnecessary scrambling lane when you rush too hard upfield trying to get to them. So we'll see how they game plan it. You know, that's the fun part.
Yeah,
we get to see what the coaches
push them out toward Dennis Jacquez and Fadil Diggs.
Exactly. Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
Put like you said, go through the middle of their offensive line and make them spill out to the outside.
Yeah,
so.
Make them one-dimensional.
Yeah.
And then you got to take care of that dimension. Because you make him one-dimensional and he runs all over you, or you make him one-dimensional and he's throwing down the field and scoring touchdowns, they're still going to beat you.
Exactly.
So you got to make him one-dimensional, but then you have to take care of that dimension. With that being said, Isaac and I are both picking Syracuse in the game. We will see you at the Dome this weekend. Remember, kickoff is on, I think it's on the ACC Network, and it is this Saturday, September 7th at noon Eastern Time. So we will see you out at the Dome. And for now, this has been Tortora.
And Alford.
And we'll talk with you all soon. God bless. No stress. Do your best. Find us on Facebook at Wake Up Call DT, X at Call DT, Instagram at wakeupcall_DT, and of course want to let you know that you can find us Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time during our normal broadcast of Wake Up Call on the channels you're on right now. YouTube.com and Facebook.com, both /WakeUpCallDT, and on WakeUpCallDT.podbean.com. And of course, you could find this show and others on Amazon Music, Audible, iHeartRadio, iTunes, and Apple Podcasts, Player FM, Podbean, Podchaser.com, Podvine, Spotify, TuneIn, and YouTube. On Podbean alone, there is over 1,800 episodes of Wake Up Call. All you have to do is search Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, or one word, Wake Up Call DT. Big time thanks to our incredible partner down in North Carolina, the Brooklyn Pickle, that you'll find on 1788 Old Morganton Road in Southern Pines, North Carolina, down the road from the famous Pinehurst Golf Courses. Big time thanks to Carvel DeWitt, the home of my Sunday exclusively on 4322 East Genesee Street in DeWitt, New York. It is the DT Dolphin down the road from Lemoyne. And that DT Dolphin is mint chocolate chip, green for the Dolphins, hot fudge, whipped cream, and a cherry, green and gold sprinkles for those Lemoyne Dolphins, and a dolphin jumping out of your whipped cream. The Wildcat Sports Pub, Bryan's Landing, Canine Camp Dog Daycare, Chick-fil-A Cicero, Canine Campground Dog Boarding, Avicoli's, GG Cards and Breaks, Pizza Van, Ma and Pa's, the snack capital of the world, Great Lakes Honda City, Mother's Cupboard, where I have my own sandwich, which is perfect for game day, and that is to wake up in the morning for this early game, head over to Mother's Cupboard and get what I call the Cuse McMother. The Cuse McMother, bacon, egg, and cheese inside of 2 pieces of French toast. You can get it with sausage or you can get it without meat. I do it bacon, egg, and cheese. Thank you all for going over there and getting it your way. The Cuse McMother exclusively at Mother's Cupboard, your home of my breakfast sandwich and great for game day on 3709 James Street in Syracuse, New York. And of course, reimagining, reinvigorating, and recreating really the world of vending is Servomation. in businesses, colleges, universities, and schools. Go to servomation.com for more information. And a big time thanks to our exclusive multimedia marketing partners, Lemoyne College, the Bryan and Stratton College Bobcats of Syracuse, and Binghamton University's Bearcats. You can find all of them by going to youtube.com/wakeupcalldt. Click subscribe, hit the notification bell, and find the Lemoyne playlist, the Bryan and Stratton College of Syracuse, the BSC Syracuse playlist, and the Binghamton playlist. For more information on your Dolphins, go to LeMoyneDolphins.com. For the Bobcats, go to Syracuse.bscbobcats.com. And for Binghamton, go to BUBearcats.com.
We love you. Stay safe.